Mr. Minister, you're actually participating today on the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence in Shipping Forum. Would you like to share your thoughts about this as a minister who has taken over fairly recently?
No doubt that it is something very important for Greece, and I strongly believe that this conference is a sort of turning point in these demanding times about the maritime affairs Greece. I'm here, I already addressed this very distinguished audience about all things, all themes of the maritime affairs globally, and I really believe that we need such opportunities in order to be updated regarding the maritime affairs internationally. I strongly believe that as minister I can support the ship owners, Greek ship owners, in order to keep their important role, their protagonistic role in the global maritime field. And I also strongly believe that with all stakeholders, from the public sector, from the private sector, we can accelerate our efforts in order to see greener field in maritime affairs, and we will reach all goals, European goals. But at the same time, I really believe that the European Union has to be one of our supportive factor in order to reach our common goals. Thank you so much.
Mr. Papadimitriou, welcome to the Operational Excellence in Shipping 2023. It's a pleasure to have you here. What is your view, though, on shipping today? Because sustainability has become a major and critical factor for both the shipping industry as well as the global economy.
Well, thank you for being here and for having the opportunity to address your audience. Going beyond the commonplace and what everybody agrees on, what I would like to stress is that regulations are ahead of technology. We need to do something about it. We cannot impose on shipping regulations that are not really feasible. I fully understand and agree with the precept that we need to have regulations in order to kickstart the process. However, that's not the end of the story. The second thing is that a lot of people are discussing incentives and subsidies to kickstart the process. That's not a long-term solution. And lastly, but importantly, I know that a lot of Greek ship owners and other international ship owners have their own internal research units. It would be good to unite our forces because nobody is going to invent the wheel single-handedly.
Now, there is obviously the importance of transparent emissions reporting, which has become a crucial issue. What do you think can be actually achieved in order for the ship owners to actually unite together and have a single system for the reporting of these emissions?
A transparent system of reporting is absolutely necessary. What is even more necessary is to have the technology to accurately measure these emissions, which is not a given from a practical point of view. The second thing is it's all good to measure the emissions. It's necessary also to have the appropriate fuels, and that's not a given also.
So, Mr. Papadimitriou, would you like to share your thoughts about the Capital Link event?
The Capital Link Forum, this one in particular, but more generally, I think are very important for the industry because it gives us the opportunity to discuss the issues of the day and the issues of the century.
Mr. Anassis, ship owners need to provide regularly emissions data to various stakeholders, such as bankers, insurers, charterers, and regulators. But there is a need for a unified system where these stakeholders, where these ship owners will actually be reporting all the transmission emissions. What can be done in order to achieve this?
Thank you for the question. Well, we had a very interesting discussion about that today. It is true that standardization is going to assist greatly in terms of reporting emissions. At the same time, it was agreed by all that innovation and technology also have a great role to play in that aspect. There's a number of challenges involved, and at the same time, the various stakeholders will have their own interests in mind in terms of pursuing transparency in emissions and standardization.
So do you actually foresee that this can actually be achieved in the next 5 or 6 years? What is the forecast for that?
Well, it's difficult to say. I did have the privilege in the panel of not having to answer any questions. I was just asking. I was just asking them. The financiers are positive and quite optimistic about the future. At the same time, I think that it is important for both owners and charterers to realize that this is an opportunity for them and not a reason for them to stand further apart. Indeed, in my view, and in the sense that we've been advising owners and charterers in relation to the various aspects of decarbonization and sustainability, clauses like the CII, for example, have unfortunately acted to enhance polarization between owners and charterers. And what they need to do is realize that it is an opportunity that they're looking at. They have to collaborate, they have to comply, and in that regard, I think it is worth considering what I call, and in my view is, a violent enforcement and a violent approach towards compliance in shipping. Shipping accounts for less than 3% of global emissions, and indeed it accounts for 80% or indeed higher than 80% of global transport. So considering that, I think it is important to take everything with a pinch of salt. The need for decarbonization and sustainability is obvious, but at the same time I feel that the global organizations in charge of decarbonization need to take a more sensitive and a more cautious approach towards shipping, in the sense that whilst it is true that shipping might not be the most transparent industry, there are steps being taken in that direction. And overall, just to answer your question, I'm very optimistic about the future.
Just a few words on the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence Forum.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's the leading forum in terms of shipping. I think it gives important stakeholders the opportunity to discuss important issues in a very open manner. Everybody knows that the industry is here today, and we're delighted to be sponsoring as Dickinson the event. And I was even more delighted to be part of a very important panel that comprised all the relevant stakeholders. Indeed, we had financiers, classification societies, owners, charters, and technology operators and technology providers.
Ms. Papageorgiou, while the jury is still out in terms of which is the ultimate winning green fuel, ship owners need to continue with fleet renewal in order to maintain competitiveness and obviously achieve compliance with environmental regulations and market expectations. So what lies ahead in terms of fuels? Because we expect fossil fuels to be around for a few more years.
I think it's a good question. It's a question we've been asking ourselves for a couple of years now, and it's about, I think what we said in the panel today was it's a gradual transition. It's not going to be a switch on and off into an alternative fuel. what we saw from LNG and the experience that we have from LNG, it does take time. There's time in terms of many aspects of it. And if you look at it in 3 parameters, there's the obvious one, which is the technology readiness of a fuel and how that technology will evolve. The regulatory aspect of it, so the regulations around these alternative fuels, which don't exist today. Then you've got the community readiness, because we are talking about the community readiness. Some of these alternative fuels will impact society and society's perception and acceptance of it. And you also have the investment readiness. So what investment is available in the market to support these the transition into these alternative fuels. So there's quite a few parameters around it that will get us to the alternative fuel. Now, alternative fuels is not one fuel, it's multiple fuels, multiple solutions, and what we're seeing is that will start to evolve and become more clear as well.
We heard today that there has been a new biomarine fuel which is actually being launched, and the production seems to be less than the actual need, the demand for it. So when it comes to talking about eco-friendly fuel, do you think that we're actually looking into a mixture of fuel, or is it going to be a specific fuel that every ship owner will have to use in their own vessels?
We have to remember that it's not only decarbonization of shipping, it's decarbonization across the transportation industry and across multiple industries. So we will be, let's say, in competition with other industries for fuels as well. So there's the reality, the practicality of what fuels will be available for the shipping sector specifically. Now when we look into that, what we see is we're starting to go into a fragmented market where we will start to see specific pathways, specific ship types, sectors, and we're starting to see some of these solutions. I also have to say, there isn't not one end alternative fuel. There are transition fuels as well. So when we talk about ammonia or we talk about methanol, we eventually will talk about a green alternative. So there's the transition fuels, but also the end result, the ones we're going to use.
Just a few words on the 30th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence Forum. Just a few words on the 13th Annual Capital Link Excellence Forum.
So this is my first time being a panel and joining a panel and being a moderator. I have to say the buzz in this room is incredible, probably because we're in this part of the world and the conversations are a little bit heated, let's say, and excited, but that's really fascinating. Really great conversations happening now outside as well as we get out of the forums. Really looking forward to the rest of the day as we capture some of these conversations. And I think these forums help in terms of platforms to allow for the 2 things we talk about today, collaboration and transparency. So thank you to Capital Link for inviting me, and looking forward to the rest of the day.
How do you see the fuel transition evolving in the container ship industry?
That's a good question. I think there are 2 answers to that question. So on the one hand, well, broadly speaking, it depends where you sit in the value chain. So if you're a liner operator, a container carrier, you have the advantage of controlling where all of your assets are deployed, number 1. Number 2, you are the party who sources the fuel, so you can put in place offtake agreements with energy providers, fuel providers. And number 3, you can determine the deployment, the geographies in which your ships are deployed. So green corridors, for example. So you can afford to take a really very long-term view and manage risks associated with adopting new fuels, be they methanol or ammonia or hydrogen or any number of fuels that the industry is exploring. So I would say that within container shipping, for the liner operators themselves, I see them leading the charge on this. On the other hand, if you take the tonnage providers, and we, Global Ship Lease, are tonnage providers to the liner operators, it's a slightly different dynamic in that we have to have a lot more clarity, really, on what will become the standard fuels of the future, because although we provide the ships to the liner operators, that's where our control stops. We can't determine where they deploy those ships. We can't determine over time which fuel they'll choose to take a strategic position on. So our approach is a two-phase approach. We think until 2030, when hopefully we will have a clearer view of what will be the standard fuels of the future. Until that time, we will focus upon making existing conventional ships more efficient. And by installing energy-saving technologies, which can improve efficiency by between 15 and 20%, by making use of data to improve the way in which the vessels are actually operated, so optimization, by adopting and making our fuels, our ships ready to run on biofuel, and finally perhaps exploring onboard carbon capture. We see that as our near-term strategy, and then when we have more clarity, transitioning to fuels of the future.
Just a couple of comments on the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence Forum.
A couple of comments on the forum.
Yes, please.
Well, I mean, obviously it's a privilege to be here, and being in Athens, which continues to be the nerve center of shipping worldwide, is exciting. And I would say it brings a sense of optimism. There seems to be ambition to drive the decarbonization project forward in shipping, and I think that's a great thing.
Mr. Agiomirgiannakis, obviously there is a brand new marine biofuel. Would you like to share with us exactly what it is about?
So today we globally first introduced and announced Green Marine, which is a proprietary biofuel specifically for marine and vessel use. This has been developed by Tailors Group over the last years, capitalizing on our biofuels experience. And the thing about what makes it so special is that this marine biofuel, because it's synthetic, mimics the fossil respective fuel like VLSFO. So it keeps the ISO 8217 2017 standard, which means that it burns like regular marine fuel, while on the other hand being renewable and giving carbon emissions savings.
Now the question is, will it actually need an engine modification to be used by the vessels?
No, its very existence and specifications require no alterations in the vessel's engines. This is why is that? Because it keeps the ISO 8217, it mimics the fossil fuel. This is why we don't need to make changes not only in the vessel, but in the engine, but also in the distribution chain, because we don't need to make changes in the pipes, in the pumps, in the whole system that actually serves globally refueling the ships.
So what is the basis where it is actually being extracted from? No, where does it come from?
Oh, actually, this green marine fuel mostly comes from residues of the industry. For example, we use residues of the soap industry, something called soap stock. We use sweet waters, which is another residue of the industry. We use animal fats. We use used cooking oils. There is a wide palette of raw material, mostly garbage, which is used to produce green marine, this liquid marine biofuel.
The production cost of this biomarine fuel compared to the fossil fuels, what is it?
Of course, like any biofuel, it's more expensive than the fossil fuels, a standard MGO, MDO or VLSFO. However, it is really cheaper than biodiesel, which is one of its competitors. It's from 7 to 22% cheaper than a biodiesel. And of course, it's almost half price than HVO, hydrogenated vegetable oil, which is another competitor.
So is there enough biomarine fuel, the one that you mentioned, to cover the needs, to meet the needs of all the vessels?
Unfortunately, the answer is no. We plan to start, we have a small capacity of 15 metric tons per day in Ritsona, Greece. We are expanding this to 450 metric tons per day within the next 2.5 years in the port of Kavala, and we plan of having 5 such factories all over the world in a horizon of 8 years. This, unfortunately, is not enough to cover the needs of the global fleet. There will have to be an energy mix there, using green marine, using technologies that make more efficient the ship. I mean, like changing propellers, dropping down revs, painting better the hull, using nanotechnologies in the hull paints, so to come to the outcome that the IMO wants.
So you actually talked about mixing fuel. How does that affect though, the emissions coming out of that of the fuel?
Green marine is designed to be used as a mixture of 15, 20, 30. You can use it as 100%, but there is no need. So up to 20-25% mixture with a standard VLSFO, it provides gas dropping, greenhouse gas dropping of like 17 to 20%, which is more than enough to cover the IMO requirements.
Now, just your thoughts about the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence Forum.
We were very happy and honored to be hosted here to present globally our new fuel. And we were also thrilled by the professionalism of the crew taking care of everything. And let me just personally note that we were a last-minute arrival in the forum, and the guys actually from Capital Link were able to see everything done professionally from Friday that we declared to be part of this convention up until now that we spoke. In 4 days, they took care of everything. Well done, guys.
I think it's very important that we look at sustainability in the supply chains as being a holistic issue that involves all the stakeholders. And particularly when you look at a complex element like decarbonization, you can't get there unless all of the stakeholders are working together. And in shipping, that can definitely implicate both the time charter in particular, or charters more generally, and the ship owner working together in a way that they really haven't in the past to try and meet a common goal for the actual operational characteristics of the ship that may very much determine its performance when it comes to measuring decarbonization. It has to happen for all of society. It just so happens we're one of the hardest to abate sectors. But I'm happy to say, if you look at not only the words, but the actions of the ship owning community, they're really taking positive, proactive steps to get there. And I do believe that the technology is going to be in reach very soon. Some of it's already in place. The fuels I have less confidence in, but they'll get there. But that's what it's really going to turn on. It's not going to be the ship owner's willingness to decarbonize or their customer or charter's willingness to decarbonize or the availability of equipment, but rather the availability at scale and at a marketable price of the alternative fuels that we'll need to decarbonize. But we will get there, and I believe we can get there by 2050, and my company is very much committed to that. It just is a steep hill that still has to be climbed. At the end of the day, the market has to pay, and that's going to be one way or another passed on to the customer. It just has to, because otherwise, if we can't make a reasonable profit to stay in business and reinvest in our fleets, there won't be shipping services. So ultimately that has to be the answer. Our customers have to be prepared for that and willing to move past rhetoric and actually take action to work with us to decarbonize. And that's going to take not only actions on their part, but increased cost, which they're going to have to absorb in the value chain. We'll do our part. We're making capital investments today to help make this happen, but the end user is ultimately going to have to pay for decarbonization just as they are ashore. The single solution, I think, is optimism and creativity together. When it comes to a single fuel, I think the answer is pretty clearly no. I think we will need a solution set of fuels, and the front runners are LNG to bio-LNG to synthetic LNG is one pathway. Bio and synthetic or E-forms of methanol is another pathway, and then E-ammonia, green ammonia, which all three of those E-type of fuels come from a green hydrogen feedstock, which doesn't exist yet, from renewable energy that doesn't exist yet. So there's a lot of work that has to be done but I think all those pathways need to be kept open while we see which ones are going to be the most successful for particular applications. And in the short term, we do have the use of some biodiesel, and I think that has a role to play now. And my company in particular, between 2019 and 2020, we used 850,000 metric tons of up to 47% blend biofuel. So we're very ready for that. We offer an off-the-shelf product. And if you look over the horizon a bit, I think you have to seriously take a look at advanced nuclear power as well. We haven't made any decision on that. I'm not here to advocate for it. However, it's a technology that has such great energy density properties to it that you can't ignore it. And I think you have to seriously take a look at that too. Well, I think it was a great event, but Capital Link historically has put on great events. That's why when Nicholas calls, I tend to try and work it into my schedule if I can. And I think we had great participants. I enjoyed the thoughtful panelists that I was paired with. And it was also great to meet up with some old friends as well.
The global supply chain, sustainability, and the role of charterers have become crucial factors in the shipping industry nowadays. So how do you think the market conditions develop in the face of current geopolitical and economic challenges?
Well, it's an interesting time. Our company focuses specifically on dry bulk, which is normally the raw materials, the commodities, and it's been somewhat of a quiet year coming off post-COVID, where we had some heights, and now we're starting to see some maturing of different trade partners, some realignment of some of the different trade lanes, and that's layered on with the geopolitical risk, the economic risks that exist, and some new developments in new markets with new sources for iron ore and bauxite, particularly West Africa, maybe slowing down a little bit of China, maybe speeding up a little bit in other places such as India.
Now, you obviously have to face the challenges of being green, being sustainable. How do you think, as charterers, you will have to meet those criteria in order to have an eco-friendly shipping crew or shipping vessel, if you like? Let me just repeat this, okay? As a charterer, you obviously need to face the green challenges as well. So how do you think you can cope with it?
I think we're past the point of wondering whether or not we have a role to play to reduce the global warming impact of our activities. So what we have to do, in our view, is we have to have a partnership between the cargo interests, the ship owners, and the operators like Oldendorff in between. There are things that can be done today. The application of technology, slowing the ships down, focusing on waste and efficiencies and improving what we can. And we look to some of the newer technologies as well as the future fuels. Unfortunately, the technology isn't ready. The new fuels are not truly ready yet, but they're coming, and it's time for all of us to make plans to adapt so we can meet the new objectives and the new goals being set for us by the IMO, the EU, and other stakeholders.
In terms of the economic cost, though, how do you think that this can be dealt with? Because as charterers, you have to relay the costs of being green to the end customer?
That's right. One of my sayings is it takes green to go green. And what I mean by that, of course, is it's going to cost money. But this isn't purely a shipping problem. This is a global energy problem. So it's not just the charterers, it's not just the ship owners. As I mentioned, the whole world has a part to play. And whether we like it or not, the whole world is going to have to pay. Things are going to become more expensive. One of the excellent parts of shipping is we're very efficient, and the cost to move goods around the world is relatively low, relatively inexpensive. So whether it's shipping Nike sneakers or televisions or raw materials like we do, we are going to see an increase in these costs spread across the full supply chain.
You said that the cost is relatively low. However, the global inflation has risen sky high, the last few months, and we've seen the Federal Reserve rising the interest rates for the 10th time. How do you think that the global shipping industry can deal with it in a way that they can actually keep the costs of transporting all the goods and the raw materials around the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to get into the nuanced details, and the shipping doesn't correlate very well strictly with the interest rates of borrowing money. I think the cost of freight, the business that we're in, what it takes to move vast quantities of global trade around the world still can be done quite efficiently and relatively economically cheap. So whether it's a couple 100,000 tons of iron ore or 20,000 containers moving from China to North America or Europe, when you break it down on a cost per ton or cost per unit, shipping is withstanding these difficult times. Of course, we're impacted. Finance isn't as available as it has been historically, but somehow shipping survives, and the overall global trade benefits by our efficiencies.
What is your forecast when it comes to global economy and the shipping industry? Do you think that there will be a new circle of evolution? Because we've seen that shipping has gone downhill the last 10 years or so.
Well, shipping is a very cyclical business, so we're going to see ups and we're going to see downs. At Oldendorff, we're not going to make comments publicly about our view of the market, but it is a long-term business.
Mr. Achtypis, safety has become one of the key factors in shipping industry, especially with the geopolitical challenges throughout the world. So what can we learn in the shipping industry regarding the recruitment, the training, the retention, as well as the welfare of seafarers when it comes to being safe at sea?
Safety is always current, and it's a challenging issue. We know that there are things to address always regarding safety, and what I have to say is that the safety has many partners, and it's not only a case that needs to be addressed either by the seafarers or the shipping company. So this means that safety is like a marriage, and all partners must contribute in this significant matter. When I say partners, I mean agents, I mean charterers, shipping companies, unions, and everyone who is involved in our shipping industry.
Nowadays, we're actually hearing about artificial intelligence, we hear about digital transformation, digital technology that can all assist somehow in the operations of the shipping industry and the shipping vessels. The question is there a combination of the two between the human element and the technology, which has actually become the trend nowadays?
Certainly, there is a connection between them. Let's not just go too far away. Let's just remember the ECDIS that has been introduced a few years ago on board ships, and despite the regulators, the best practices that exist in our days, the seafarers still facing difficulties in setting up properly an ECDIS and using the ECDIS on board ships. So imagine that having now artificial intelligence, which is a brand new thing and groundbreaking thing for us, will certainly help us to navigate safely our ships. But again, the seafarers must be well trained how to use artificial intelligence and to be sure that the safety protocols that are required to be there are properly implemented by us, the industry, and they are somehow, let's say, addressed by the shipping companies as well. So if we don't inspire people and motivate people to use this new technology that comes in the near future, then again, artificial intelligence will be like an ECDIS of their own times.
The last 4 years, we've all experienced the COVID pandemic, then we experienced the war in Ukraine. These two factors had a detrimental effect on the shipping industry itself as well. First of all, in recruiting the right people, and then choosing the people that will actually be able to coexist within or on board a vessel. So Where does health and safety come into that?
Well, when you look at a crew synthesis, you may see people from various countries, and this means that we may have different mentalities on board. So we have to ensure as an industry that all these people together will coexist, because we know that being a seafarer is maybe the most challenging and the most difficult profession of the world. In our office, for example, we stay there until the afternoon, and then we can go back at home, meet our family, spend time with our children, which is not the case for the seafarers. So we have to ensure that the environment on board will be, of course, not equally to our family, but at least they will be free to communicate, they will be free to exchange ideas, and there will be no blaming or conditions that will make them feel very bad.
Now, a few words about the 13th annual Capital Link Operational Excellence in Shipping Forum.
I really enjoyed our participation. It was a great event, very well organized. I would like to congratulate Nikos personally for his contribution to the shipping industry, and I'm looking forward to participate again in one of the future Capital Link forums.
We're talking about decarbonization, carbon, the carbon offsets, the carbon capture, and the carbon credits. All these issues are key to the operation of the shipping industry. What do you think are the best policies that can be applied in order to achieve the criteria and the goals set by the IMO?
Well, the main thing we need from IMO or the government member states of the IMO is certainty. And that's going to be provided by the new regulatory framework, which we hope will be in place by 2025. In particular, we hope that this will include some form of flat rate contribution to an IMO fund, the majority of which can be used to provide rewards to first movers who use eligible alternative fuels in order to narrow the price gap between the new fuels and the conventional fuel ships are using today.
The most recent geopolitical challenge, though, be it the Ukrainian war or the inflation as well as the global economy challenges, do they actually pose a threat to the IMO implementation date?
We're very positive, actually, notwithstanding the geopolitical differences between governments. The fact that they came together in July to agree a revised strategy for decarbonising the industry, including really some quite ambitious GHG reduction targets, I think argues well for the future. It's going to be a very complicated negotiation of the measures adopted in 2025, but we're optimistic that IMO will get there.
You talked about a fund that will essentially reward the first movers when it comes to ships. What is the percentage of ship owners that have already implemented those regulations regarding the criteria for decarbonization as we're actually talking about ships and being refurbished or even have the engines modified?
Well, all ship operators, in order essentially to have a license to trade, are complying with the operational and technical requirements which the IMO has already adopted. And at the moment, of course, they are busy preparing for compliance with the new IMO carbon intensity framework. We're confident that if an IMO fund was established to which ship owners would have to contribute, there would be a very robust enforcement mechanism through a combination of flag state and port state control to ensure that all ship owners that were required to do so would make contributions to the IMO fund.
We're talking about decarbonization and all the alternative strategies that have been put forward by now. They seem to have flaws. For example, slowing down the ships while en route, just using different types of fuels. or even modifying their engines. Which one of these strategies do you think can actually be applied in the foreseeable future?
There's no single solution, there's no silver bullet, and the operational technical solutions that will be applied by shipping companies will depend very much on the circumstances, the profile of their fleet and the operating area of their fleet. But the key thing to remember is that compliance with GHG reduction regulations is ultimately in the ship operator's self-interest, because fuel still remains the largest cost for ship operators, even exceeding the cost of capital involved in building and purchasing new ships.
And just a comment on the 13th annual Capitaling Excellence Forum.
I think this has been a really excellent event, really high level of speakers, and just that right level, a mix of different perspectives, and taking the high level but also descending into the details so we understand the truly complicated nature of the arguments about decarbonisation.
Mr. Bouthillier, we're talking about carbon, the carbon offsets, carbon capture, carbon credits, all these available strategies, if you like, for decarbonisation. How do you think these can actually impact the shipping industry?
Obviously, a significant impact. Nevertheless, you have to look at the various angles. You have the voluntary carbon market, you have the regulatory carbon market. We at Vertis, we are trading on the regulatory side of the carbon market. We are trading EUS, which is a financial regulated product under the EU ETS. We have been trading that for 20 years for industry, aviation, and now for shipping. Clearly, it's coming at a cost for shipping industry, and I think the best answer that a ship owner or the stakeholders can give is by getting prepared ahead of the curve, being proactive, preparing themselves to face that new challenge, specifically the ones under the EU ETS.
So is there a single solution, if you like, that could work for all ship owners and charterers?
No, there is not a single solution. When it comes to energy efficiency, reducing your emission, there are today a lot of available solution devices, technical solutions that you can implement to reduce your emission. When it comes to, again, the regulatory carbon market, you have no choice but to comply. So when a ship today is going to come to Europe, he will have to cover his emission by purchasing EUAs corresponding to the level of emissions. It's not an option.
Carbon emissions cost, though, they may be relayed to the end customer, which at the time seems to be a high cost. So is there an equilibrium between the ship owners, the shipping industry, and the end customer who is actually being called up to pay for these costs?
It's always the same. The answer is as simple as we're all going to pay for it. That's clear. Now, that being said, I think it's for the ship owners, what is important is to prepare the trading strategy to try actually to avoid any financial burden generated by this new EU ETS system. So clearly, the idea is to pass the cost on to the charterers based on the timing, so that eventually that's going to be as neutral as possible for the ship owner.
And finally, would you like to make a comment on the annual Capitaling Forum?
I mean, I've been now joining the Capitaling Forum for 1 or 2 years. I mean, they are doing a great job, great team, good level of participation. I would say in numbers, but also in quality, which is also always very important too.
Mr. Zolotas, technology is actually a key factor in the shipping industry. So where do we go from now on? What is the next stage in the shipping industry when it comes to technology? How will this affect the way we do business in shipping?
We had an exciting panel in Capital Link about that, and I had the privilege to moderate some very distinguished persons who lead companies in that respect, and they gave us examples of what they do. And we see that technology today is not a threat, it's something that can be a day-to-day tool, is adopted by companies without blending with the humans. It's not a threat for the humans, it's blending with the humans, but on the same time, we have questions. Because it's a difficult new thing, let's say, that we have to face. Relationships, liabilities. We just spoke about how artificial intelligence tools are giving support to decisions made. And as long as these decisions affect performance or other aspects, can be fair enough. But when it is about safety on a difficult situation on board, then the master should be the one to decide. And when decisions are transferred ashore, sometimes this could be creating some risks. So we talked about these risks, and we touched upon them. On the other hand, we cannot but say that the data that the shipping company is having today is huge. And this data is impossible to be processed by normal human brain. And there is no point on that. Humans should be other, more sophisticated things. So technology definitely is a tool for the future and will assist both safe operations and decarbonization, which, as you know very well, is a big bet for all of us and for our society.
Technology, though, could actually help in reducing costs, maybe even improving the efficiency in communications, or even enhance the safety and security of the crews.
Definitely technology can improve costs. It is not the main aspect, is not to improve costs, but of course shipping is a very efficient business, is the way to transport goods. 90% of the goods transported worldwide, is transported by shipping in a very safe way. So our main goal is to improve these aspects and at the same time, of course, to improve efficiency, which means improve costs. Because in the end of the day, costs improvement means sustainable solutions for the environment and also for the business. Because sustainability is a holistic thing, is not only one aspect, is all these aspects together. And costs, of course, are part of the equation, which technology, of course, is assisting.
When it comes to the implementation and use of technology, that means that there needs to be the seafarers or the crew that has to be trained in using this kind of technology. So this cost, do you think that it equates or equalizes the cost of implementing and actually using this technology on board the ships, the initial cost?
I think that is rather more than a cost, I would say, is an investment. An investment on people, and an investment on people is always something that it is important to be done and will pay you back much more than what you did. So the investment of crew training, which definitely is to be accelerated. We have so many systems on board, expectations for new fuels, new energy-saving devices on board, complicated systems that are in order to improve efficiency of the vessels towards the decarbonization targets of IMO, European Union, etc., are of paramount importance. And training of the crew on this, the traditional training of crew members done up to now, is not covering all these aspects. So we need to accelerate it. There will be a cost, but as I said, it's not a cost, it's an investment to be shared among the stakeholders. For example, technology providers have to take part of this cost. We spoke before in our panel, one of the panelists said that training of my crew is to be done by the provider of the technology and shared with the provider. So if the main engine provider gives me a new fuel for the engine, he has to train my crew and we can share the cost.
Technology, though, it may actually become part of modifying the engine or even installing new systems about the air or the decarbonization. Where does this cost relate to, though? How can a ship owner cover these costs?
This is a very big question that if I knew the answer, I would get a lot of money. I represent a classification society. I am working many years for RINA, and in RINA we do a lot of research. We participate in a lot of projects, real projects, projects that can become, it's not only concepts, but can be in reality, real vessels. And in these kind of projects, of course, we notice one parameter that is an increase of costs. Definitely the decarbonization will have an increased costs. And we are going all to pay for this cost, there is no doubt about it. The thing is that if we pay the cost and we get the benefit, I mean a better environment, we have seen lately, especially this summer, we have seen, and we still believe, a lot of situations that are probably due also to the climate change. So an accelerated approach, and I think that wait and see is not an approach. We need to act. We cannot wait until something happens. We need to take actions, maybe simple today actions. And with all these projects we participate, we and of course other classification societies, other stakeholders, try to make them become reality, and at that point also the costs will be viable to the ship owners. Of course, a component is always banks and financial institutions that have to finance the valid projects, because today we had a lot of discussions and a lot of confusion what is green and what is not.
Could you please recall one of the examples that was given by either ship owners or charterers in investing in technology that really works and can be applied by other ship owners as well?
Listen, we heard before in one other panel regarding the air bubbles adopted by MSC, for example, to name a company. Technomar, general manager, referred to many ESD technologies that have applied on their vessels, and this can be depending on the type of the vessel, because not one solution is appropriate for all types of vessels. For example, container ships, improvement of bulbous bows with appropriate propellers, optimization of the aft part of the vessel with propellers and devices to improve the flow, can make really give a lot of benefit to these kind of vessels that, as we know, are big consumers. Other type of vessels could be type of paints, could be other solutions that are applied. But there are today a lot of solutions that somebody can take. And of course, the ultimate solution is to reduce power, which the regulations already today with the EXI foresee and impose, let's say, so many vessels have an imposed reduction of power, which of course obviously is reducing the emissions. But on the other hand, as we heard about some charterers, then you need more vessels in order to carry out the same volume of cargoes. So for the environment, this is not good as well. So the problem is each one of us, from his own perspective, to provide the solutions that he can. And ship owners have a lot of solutions for improving the efficiency of existing ships.
Now, finally, would you like to comment on the 13th Annual Capital Link Shipping Forum?
It's always great to be here. You know, many people, a lot of discussions, decision makers. I think is a place to be. And I am always happy to come back and back again, not only here in Athens, but also in other cities around the world that you make these great events. Congratulations.
Captain Sarma, technology has a transformational impact across all areas of shipping, optimizing technical and operational performance. So what do you think the impact of digital technology will be on the shipping industry?
Yes, so digital technologies are having a humongous impact in the marine industry. Also because the communication standards have gone up. Nowadays we have better connectivity with the vessels. We also have more computing capability on board and shore, which is leading us to the capability to employ new technologies, new concepts, and even artificial intelligence to our advantage. At Columbia, we're taking this very seriously. We are partnering with technology experts and creating new products which is going to prepare Columbia for the future of shipping.
If you could be a bit more specific, if you could be a bit more specific on how we can use digital technology, for example, in reducing costs, improving efficiency, maybe the communications or even the health and safety.
Yes. So at Columbia, we are using new technologies which are powered by AI. So as an example, we are using image recognition technologies to identify certain conditions, certain behaviors, or for that matter, even the health of an asset. And this allows us to gain insight into the vessel's condition, what we could not do before. We are also using new innovative applications which were not possible before to get inside the engine room and know the operating parameters of engines, machineries, and even their conditions. This allows us not only to know what is the present health, but also to predict or have a good insight about predictive maintenance of the vessel.
Do you see any pitfalls in using digital technology though? Because this technology may actually come as a solution to all these problems that you mentioned, but sometimes we have also failures in digital technology in implementing it as well as the costs between it.
Yes, so the most common pitfall of technology is over-reliance. Like the way we say it in the rules of the road call regs, that your machinery is as good as what it can tell you, but a human factor is always more important to create reliance. We apply the same concept and say the technology is as good as the data that goes into it and the person who uses it. And that's why at Columbia, for technologies, we use the 3 Ps. The people who are using the technology, the processes, how the technology is going to be used, and the platform, how reliable the platform will be.
And just a couple of words on the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence in Shipping Forum.
It's always a pleasure attending the Capital Link Forum. As you know, Columbia is a sponsor for a very long time. We really appreciate participating, meeting stakeholders of marine industry, not just limited to a particular background, but from variety of backgrounds and even startups or some seasoned players as well.
Mr. Gross, artificial intelligence has actually become a trend nowadays, and the question is, what will the impact of AI be on shipping industry and its operations as well?
So AI is a very unique technology, capability, that is not coming to replace anyone, not the crew on board, not the office, but it's coming to empower, to reduce the workload, making the operation more efficient, enabling the crew, the ship, the entire fleet to operate in a higher performance, higher safety levels, and to be able to do their job in a better way to make the entire supply chain much more sustainable.
Could you actually give us some examples of how this can impact on the shipping operations itself?
Yes, of course. So, today when you're operating a ship and navigating a ship from point A to point B, there are so many tasks to do. The workload is immense. And using AI, you can start reducing the workload. You can start reducing the workload on the navigation side. So very similar to the aviation industry, where 95% of the time the airplane is flying by itself. A ship today is operated very manually manner. But if you can take the certain points that are easier to navigate, so instead of having a watchkeeper who is looking around the vessel constantly for hours, for days, you can let a computer doing that. And by that, you're reducing the workload, you're enabling the people to rest, to be focused on more other tasks. And once the vessel is entering a more complex type of situation, heavy weather, entering a port, then you want the human to take control. You want higher level of intelligence, and you want them to be alert and focused and not under fatigue. So this is what our AI is integrated with operation, empowering the crew to do their work better.
Essentially, we're talking about safety and security as well. But when it comes to workload, do you think that artificial intelligence could actually take away some of the jobs of the crew, or even lessen the jobs available for crews?
It will not replace the crew. Rather, it will replace certain jobs that are easier to do, easier tasks. So for example, again, navigating in open ocean can be done by a computer in a very high performance. But then once the vessel is entering a more complex scenario, you want the crew to do the job. So basically, taking easier tasks, moving it to the AI. And then complex tasks where you need higher level of intelligence, this is where you want the crew to be involved and to be the most focused. So you can reduce the workload, but not replacing the crew completely.
The advent of artificial intelligence, though, is about to accelerate technology's impact on the industry. So, how do you think that ship owners and solutions providers will actually be using technology in order to optimize their operations and the priority areas to which they allocate their capital, other than navigating, obviously?
So I think today what we see is, in a way, a perfect storm. For one side, you have increasing operational challenges, safety, shortage in crewing, regulations around emission, fuel cost. But from the other side, you have the enabler, which is connectivity. Ships are becoming connected to the cloud, which enables to deploy new technology on board, to deploy AI on board, and then start solving a lot of critical problems. So from the workload perspective, reducing the workload. From safety perspective, increasing the automation. From regulation, CII, fuel consumption is optimizing the fuel, the voyages based on routes, based on time to the next port, and basically taking a lot of data and a lot of data set, analyzing it in real time, and then provide insights or recommendations or automations in the right time, in the right manner to optimize the entire operation of the vessel. So how the ship owners needs to do it with technology providers, they need to work as a partner. One side is to actually build a solution and a great technology capability, but then you need also the crew and the company to know how to operate it, how to use the technology, how to utilize it to get the most value. And for that, this is eventually you need the companies, the technology providers, it's their responsibility to provide the right training, right onboarding, and to know how to implement new AI technology, so it's going to be easy for the crew to operate it on the day-to-day basis.
You mentioned training, which is a very crucial factor in using artificial intelligence. What is the cost of implementing artificial intelligence on board the ships, provided that you need the crew to be trained on this specific use of study?
So because ships became connected to the cloud, and this is a process, you see companies like Starlink, OneWeb come in, and basically you have a lot of bandwidth now, so you can deploy technology easier. So basically what happened is that the cost of deploying new technology went really down. Instead of putting a black box in the ship and upgrading it with, sending someone on board with a hard drive and upgrading softwares, everything is done remotely today. So the cost of implementing new technology went down. The training also went down because you can do training to a computer, do training remotely. So basically all the implementation level in the last couple of years on ships went down. And this is why we see also the adoption increasing.
Now, a few words about the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence Shipping Forum.
I think Capital Link is an amazing forum. Eventually it's bringing the industry leaders from Greece, from other places in the world, different type of stakeholders, classification societies, shipbuilders, ship owners, charterers. So it's amazing to see how the industry has progressed, become more innovative, and thinking about the future. And I think it's a privilege to be here, and it's very exciting times.
I'm delighted that today we hosted the 13th Annual Capital Link Operational Excellence in Shipping Forum. This forum focuses every year on best industry practices, and this year's theme was building long-term value through sustainability. Our forum focused on major current critical industry topics, such as the alternative pathways to decarbonization, how to standardize and report the emissions, carbon emissions, and what are the benefits to every stakeholder. Then we talked about fleet renewal against the backdrop of uncertainty regarding the ultimate winning fuel. We talked about ship safety, we talked about technology, so we talked about all critical operational matters, and of course we touched upon the human element, which is one of the most important topics in shipping. I'm particularly proud of the caliber of our speakers today. Our forum, traditionally, and especially this year, brought together leading ship owners from Greece and internationally, but also we had 6 major international charterers who command a very large percentage of the global trade. And these charterers, who are the ones who hire the ships from the ship owners, they came to share their views on geopolitics, on sustainability, on decarbonization, on all operational topics. So in the context of the forum, we had the opportunity to recognize Mr. Rasmus Bak-Nielsen, the head of decarbonization of Trafigura. Rasmus has been a pioneer and has shown tremendous and unique commitment on the decarbonization of the shipping industry. He is also the head of the Sea Cargo Charter, and he has really devoted a lifetime to help the industry move forward in decarbonization. And we have been honored that we had the privilege to recognize him today. Again, the attendance was phenomenal, and again, it speaks volumes reflecting the caliber of the topics and the speakers. And we look forward to next year. I'm very happy that this forum went so well. By the way, I'd like to mention that Capital Link, to remind everybody, we have been this year present in every major event taking place around the globe. We were in New York, we went to Singapore, then we went to London, and now we're here. We are going to Shanghai, Tokyo, really Hamburg later on. So I'm delighted that Capital Link carries the flag of shipping and Greek shipping all over the world. Also, we had the unique privilege today to welcome, in his first public appearance, the new Minister of Shipping, Mr. Stylianides, who shared his vision and strategy going forward. As we all know, Mr. Stylianides became the shipping minister recently, and we have been very honored that he made the first public appearance in his forum, in our forum today.